I follow the three M's in my brain. The first M is message. Are we clear on who we are marketing to, speaking to? The second M is motion for sales, right? So what does the sales motion look like? And then the third M is math. So I look at the metrics. What's the win rate? How long does it take to go from a discovery call to signature? Depending on what those metrics show, then we can start to zero in on what does the strategy look like over the next 3 to 6 months.
Welcome to the Incremental Marketer, a content series where we meet with top marketing executives and leaders across industries to help you drive growth in your business. Welcome to the Incremental Marketer. Today, we are joined by Katharine Hill Contag, a fractional CMO and go-to-market strategist who helps founder-led B2B companies turn heroic selling into repeatable growth engine. She leads Claro Group, where she builds positioning, demand engines, and sales operations for early teams. Her past experience includes leading go-to-market strategy at Stackline, serving as head of strategy, and head of sales and marketing at a PE-backed B2B services company. She was founder and CEO of Color Clutch, a consumer brand that earned a spot on Oprah's Favorite Things. A graduate of both Stanford University and Harvard Business School, Kat brings operator energy and deep expertise to every engagement. Kat, welcome. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Before we get into it, tell us about Claro Group. What is your current role and what is Claro Group about?
Yeah, so it's a consulting firm that I started with my business partner, who's also my husband, and it really stemmed out of 2020, where COVID hit and everyone started working from home, and there was also this surge around fractional expertise. And we had just run a business in Florida. And it was one of those B2B services businesses where we really, really could have used a fractional CFO, a fractional CMO, someone who really knows their craft, but we didn't need a full-time hire. And so we said, oh my goodness, there's a lot of opportunity here to help other businesses like that. And so we built Claro, is from the Spanish word claro, so clarity. And we built the business to help other founders with both fractional CFO services and then fractional CMO. And so I'm the CMO and Nick is the CFO.
And you're both fractional. So tell us about what drew you to the fractional model. Obviously, your story from 2020 and coming out of COVID makes a lot of sense. But you've got a storied career in a bunch of different capacities where you were full-time, either strategy or some marketing function. What in your background drew you to the fractional role?
So a couple things. I think first and foremost, I have to acknowledge the life circumstances. We had a 3-month-old at the time. We had just moved. We sold our business in Florida and moved to Minneapolis to be closer to family. Both Nick and I are very entrepreneurial, and we wanted to help other business owners because we didn't have an immediate business that we were going to build or start. And so it provided some flexibility in terms of hours. And it also allowed us to meet other business owners in the area, but also remotely, and offer those services that could help them really scale, given our experience of starting sort of at zero and growing to over $1 million. That sort of sweet spot. How do we help people in that really sort of messy, chaotic initial start?
0 to $1 million is the hardest. Would you agree?
I agree.
Is that just a biased perspective?
Yeah, I think that I'm biased. So I'm from Palo Alto, California. I grew up with entrepreneurs in my family and in my neighborhood, and ever since I was a little kid, I was the one that had the lemonade stand. My parents are business owners, so I was this 7-year-old running a lemonade stand with a P&L. So I had to pay for all of my cost of goods. And so that's my, where I come from. And I think that's the most fun. That was play for me. I didn't have the Barbie dolls, but I had the lemonade stands and I did the marketing sides, which was the best street corner and all that kind of stuff. And so I love that 0 to 1 because I love brainstorming ideas, the creativity that comes with it. And then I also love the chaos and bringing processes and order to that stage. I think Nick, who now works with larger size companies, and he prefers that. But there's just a sweet spot for working directly with founders from my perspective.
Absolutely. I love the lemonade stand story. You'll have to give my daughters some tips. They have a large sign ready to go. But I think we just missed the window in Minnesota.
Well, you can always do cider. I wasn't a one-man band. I did lemonade, I did cookies. I also picked plums in the neighborhood and sold those. And, some did better than others. But
that is great. You're always on, seasonally responsive.
Exactly.
You have clients at all stages, but let's talk about the engagement process and especially that early stage kind of company. So you step into a new customer or client engagement. How do you assess whether or not their go-to-market strategy is working?
A couple things. So I almost always work directly with the founder. So it's a situation where the founder has had success with their go-to-market motion. And it's typically gotten to a point where they're really good at doing it, but they don't have a team to do it, or they need to translate what they know and hear to their team members. And so there's like any good consultant, I have a framework and I follow the 3 M's in my brain. And just for context, because go-to-market can mean a lot of things to different people. I view it as you've got marketing, sales, and then customer success. So sort of the full lifeline. So typically I go in and first I look at messaging. So are we clear on who we are marketing to, speaking to, not only what we say, but who are we speaking to? So that's the first M is message. The second M is motion for sales, right? So what does the sales motion look like? Is it 100% the founder? Is there a repeatable process that we are following? If not, that's okay, but we want to get to that repeatable motion. And then the third M is math. So I look at the metrics of what's the win rate? How long does it take to go from a discovery call to signature? And depending on what those metrics show, then we can start to zero in on what's working really well and what is just a Band-Aid. And then we can begin to dissect, okay, what does the strategy look like over the next 3 to 6 months?
And how many data points do you need that are in agreement to know that you have one of those right?
I think that's one of the things about the early stage that I like is it's not complicated, right? It's usually, you have to keep it simple, and it usually ties back to revenue. So if we're making sales, things are generally working. And so we need a couple data points to show, win rate, right? If your win rate is generally 30% or more, that's great. If it's a lot less than that, then there's something in the sales process that's amiss. So maybe we're talking to the wrong people. Maybe we are saying the wrong things, right? And so figuring out what is wrong, it doesn't take more than 2 to 3 data points is what I found.
Now, in your go-to-market planning process, I assume you're flagging bad habits or mistakes in the early part of working with these early stage companies. What's the most common or what's the biggest mistake you see in that go-to-market planning process?
I would say the 2 things that I see the most is just wanting to do it all, right? So that's the first thing is you are a small business, you're scrappy, you don't have a lot of team members, but you see these larger companies doing all these different things and they seem to be working and they're talking about it on LinkedIn. And so this urgency to do everything, I think can actually stall out a lot of companies. So trying to bring that focus and what are the goals over the next, 3 to 6 months as we're working together. And then the second piece is often around that first M that we talked about, the messaging and that ICP. Who are we speaking to? Oftentimes they think there's clarity around it, but there's not. And so building out who that persona is, literally down to, we have a slide in our sales playbook that we put a picture, like a stock image of who is this person, what's the name, what's their title, what are their concerns? And really, it's not about us, it's about them when we're going to talk to them in the sales process.
How many different ICPs have you seen, in a successful go-to-market? Do you have like a primary and a bunch of supporting actors the entourage around the ICP, or are you selling to multiple touch points in an organization?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I try to guide founders and companies to, at that early stage, again, focus, right? Focus is a big word that I keep repeating to them. So focusing on who are we speaking to and keeping that fairly tight, right? So that key ICP. However, in the sales process, there could be multiple decision makers, right? Or people that weigh in on the process. And so clearly mapping out who that might be, I've realized is something that earlier stage companies might not be considering, or they mix it and they think, oh,
Right.
they're all our ICP, when no, we have one main person we sell to, and then there's a world around that person that we need to be thoughtful about as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess I'll go there too with industries that have, the involvement of an agency, like a partner agency, media, or creative or strategy. Do you work with agencies at this stage, and how do you involve agencies if you do?
So my advice right now, typically the early stage, sometimes I come in and there is an agency, a marketing agency that they've partnered with, but I really encourage the team and the founder to be hands-on. So whether they're working with an agency or not, they need to be involved. And more times than not, I see them being hands-off. And that's when things can go amiss, I think, because the agency is running in one direction and we're not really tying it back to the results that we need to see.
In your experience, as you look at who's the best salesperson for the startups that you work with, the early stage companies, what do you typically advise on that front?
So it's interesting because oftentimes the founder is the one doing the selling and they're in the rooms and they're really good at it. That's why their company is getting traction. And so as we try to transition to a sales team in the organization, I like to think of it in two ways. So we pull the founder out of the sales process, not completely. They're still guiding how it should go and in that process. But then we've started doing this term that's out there called founder marketing, where we create a thoughtful content strategy that the founder can articulate. Usually it's on LinkedIn. And so creating a cadence of those content pieces where people who are in the buying process or even not, they just better understand from the founder in not so many words, what are they selling, but also what's their journey been, right? And getting to know that founder in a multidimensional way, because the saying is true, people buy from people. They want to hear from the owner, the founder, in terms of why they started the business, what maybe their case studies have been, why have they been successful in certain ways. And then also the vulnerability piece is really, I've seen that resonate really well. If founders are willing to say, hey, we were at this point and now we're here, here's what I learned. And these were some of my struggles, if you will.
Right.
That resonates really well. So it's a nice way to keep the founder engaged with that sort of the front of the house sales piece, but not on the discovery calls on a day-to-day basis.
That makes sense. And what does that look like content-wise? Is it long form, interviews? Is it short form? Is it articles? What's the kind of portfolio that you've experimented with?
Usually, so it's a conversation with the founder. And I typically ask, do you want to be the face for this organization? And a lot of times they're into it, but they don't have time to create the content. So, okay, I got a yes or no. And then from there, we say, well, what format feels natural? And usually LinkedIn is an easy one because it doesn't take a lot of time for us to write the posts in a voice that works for them. They can sign off on it, they can edit it, and then we get real-time data in terms of engagement, but also lead generation. How is this impacting sales? And we track that in the CRM. In terms of marketing channels, it's something that we track, and it's the last 3 founders that I've worked with, it's generated quite significant sales in just a matter of a couple weeks. So they can see the value in it. And it's also in a way therapeutic because they get to think about, hey, take a step back from the business. What's important to me? What do I want to share with people? How do I want to articulate that? It's kind of a fun, creative process that, hopefully doesn't take too much of their time, but then we're able to help them build that personal brand out.
And as you build out that brand, at what point do you look to hire a team, a sales team, BDRs, AEs, and when do you know it's the right time to do that?
We typically will hire one person at a time. We don't hire a fleet, right? We want to build. It's a unique person that we're looking for to come in. So it's someone who hopefully has a sales background is the ideal case, but then also is familiar with the type of business that they're stepping into. And then the third piece is that they are excited about being in on that ground level, right? So we typically give them a playbook that we've built by working with the founder and understanding what the sales process is and looks like and how it should be handled. But we want someone to come in who is excited to take that on and make it their own. And so it's a living, breathing document that they add to. So that's the kind of individual we look for when we're bringing them on. And typically I found that more junior folks are a good fit for this because they're scrappy, they're excited, and they kind of want to make a name for themselves. And so working at this early stage is a good fit for everyone involved.
I know a lot of companies in that same boat, right? It's a pretty persistent problem. We have limited resources, but we have unlimited storytelling.
I think that's why I've latched onto it is because I've been doing the go-to-market and the sales, and I love that. It's really fun. But this founder marketing keeps popping up as something that people want to do but don't really know how and what's the structure. And so it's kind of a fun space to play in now.
The founder marketing story triggers something near and dear to our hearts at Slingwave, which is how do you know it's working? And what's the attribution model or method that you use to tie back that outreach to leads? And I love the stories that you mentioned in terms of somewhat immediate measurable impact from those outreaches.
Yeah. And this is really important. I found on the marketing side of go-to-market is, especially at the early stage, you have to be able to show impact. And typically it's impact on revenue, right? Otherwise, I think it's easy particularly if a founder doesn't come from a marketing background, it might be easy for them to say, oh, it's not working, it doesn't matter. So if you can show clearly through the data, then that helps build the case for continuing these channels. And so at the early stage, it's a little bit easier, right? It's a more lightweight way of tracking. So there's two things that we do specifically on the founder marketing side. One is UTM tracking, right? So creating links that are on your LinkedIn profile, or if you send someone, if they DM you for a meeting, send them a Calendly link with those tracking measures, right? Super easy. Right. And the second thing is we just ask our sales team when they're on the call, before you move a deal from discovery over to, disco or proposal, you have to label where the source is. And so if it's from LinkedIn, if it's from a field event, that is sort of an automation that's baked into the CRM. You've got to manually tag where this person heard about the company.
Yeah, CRM best practices. Are you mostly advising HubSpot or Salesforce, or where are you actually in the tooling on CRM with your clients?
So the CRMs that I mostly work with are HubSpot and Salesforce. I do have a client right now that's on Pipedrive, so familiar with that. I always advocate for HubSpot for early stage companies. I just love that one. I think it's easy to edit and build the way you want it to. Everyone loves to vibe code, right? So I'm working on building out something where in my ideal world, we look at all the LinkedIn posts for the last 30 days, and we can crawl and see who engaged with it, who commented, or who reposted. We take those names and they automatically match to the CRM. So for any leads or deals that are in the pipeline, then it will tag that it's LinkedIn influenced. Perfect. So they're engaging with it. We just want to note, hey, we don't know if this is how they found it, but it is influencing their conversations with us.
Do you have a list of other interesting tools that the team has maybe used? For example, we use Surf. There's also, others that I can go into Apollo and Ocean.io and others.
Yeah, Apollo, Clay I've used as well. Those are good. I think everyone's trying to figure it out. And honestly, I use ChatGPT a lot for things in terms of building custom GPTs for sales coaching, building custom GPTs for the founder voice and content. Those right now, I found most helpful because you continue to update it with historicals, and it's really helpful.
We want to double click into that because it's
Yeah.
near and dear to everyone's hearts, is how to use AI and LLMs in more productivity, and kind of those use cases seem squarely in the wheelhouse of what's helpful. So can you talk about one or two of those? What have you done on the sales coaching side, for example?
Yeah. So again, with early stage companies, sometimes they start building out their sales team before I'm there, and they bring in people from other parts of the business who are interested in doing sales and are, good at speaking to customers, but they don't have that traditional sales background. And so sometimes that can work out really well, especially if they're open to feedback and coaching. And so I have, for each client, I've set up a custom GPT where I've taken, I originally called it a trash can, but that's the wrong term. We want to use crock pot. So we'll say it's a crock pot of
Excellent.
of, of data. So I have great resources are Winning by Design. Gong has great resources, Clary. And I take all of my favorite sort of, sales coaching materials and put it into this GPT. And then it will review the transcript that I upload to it, and it'll spit out a scorecard. And then it'll also highlight different areas where the sales rep could focus or do better next time. And, it allows me to, rather than listening to the 30-minute phone call, I can still listen to it. I go in and listen to a few minutes, but I can be really focused on looking at the different areas that matter and giving that feedback. And then we just build sort of a database for that specific rep of, here are all your calls, here's the feedback, here's the trajectory of what you're improving on. And we can have just better conversations, and it's helpful to everyone.
Sales was one. And then the second that you mentioned was founder, really on the founder marketing front. Can you tell us more about that AI function?
So right now I'm using ChatGPT and again, a custom GPT for each founder that I work with. And so what we do is I always start off the founder marketing with a questionnaire to understand their personality. It's like personality types and content pillars and all that good stuff. So you upload that. But then I also upload historical LinkedIn posts as we are creating them and as we see the data and the engagement. And so it continues to inform and help us hone the voice of that founder. And I know there are so many, specifically for content, so many AI things out there. I just prefer to use AI as a thought partner rather than, I never want it to create the content, because I think it becomes a little bit of slop, right? We still want our voice to show through it. So that's why I like to own the GPT and have conversations as a thought partner with it rather than, hey, can you create this post for me?
How do you use it, I guess, with your team? Is it everybody in the organization you're working with, you share it on a Teams basis? Do you have your own individual instance?
So I use it as an individual basis right now. I think there are definitely opportunities, and this gets into a little bit of, what's the corporate strategy for AI, right? Like, do you have an enterprise account? Are you encouraging everyone on your team to use it? All of those functions, I think everyone's trying to figure out right now of how to roll it out throughout the company. But I think there will be those opportunities for, if we find something that works, then we roll it out through the company and everyone can start to use it. I'm not trying to gatekeep anything, right? But we want to build the recipe and make sure it works before we sort of roll it out.
That makes sense. There was that MIT article about 95% of projects at the corporate level have stalled out or not achieved their fundamental promise. How are you seeing it at the small company level in terms of that earlier stage?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, I say this all the time, like, I can't imagine working without AI anymore. At the early stage, it's so helpful from a productivity standpoint and a thought partner, right? Like, you're exhausted running this business, right? And so having a thought partner who can help you think about it and just make things faster, I see a big impact on the early stage level. I think, once you get to a larger company and more people, like, it can get a little bit messier. I'm starting to read a little bit more about how people are rolling it out through companies. But I think it's a challenge, right? Because what I see, you talk about the messy middle. I see if companies are like, yeah, we should use AI, but we don't really know how, and so everyone has their own account. Data, talk about data privacy, right? Like data is just being shared, and just it's like every man for themselves. And I think there is some good in that, right? We want people to experiment and play, but it's kind of analogous to the early stage journey, right? Get out there, get creative, play, but then we've got to put some processes around it to really scale it.
Going back to something you said in terms of attribution and knowing it's working. So founder marketing was a great example. What are some other examples when you found a channel that's working, be it LinkedIn or out of home or whatever you're advising? What signals tell you it's time to go deep, and what signals tell you it's time to cut?
Yeah, there was an example just with a company I was working with. We try to be really thoughtful about creating, I call them tiny experiments. And so doing 2 to 3 channel experiments over a 6-week period and seeing what sticks and honestly where we're seeing revenue come from, and that direct correlation. And so, I like doing 2 or 3 at a time, because then you have things to compare against, right? And the 6-week period is just long enough that you can get good data, but it's short enough where you can make quick changes and iterations. And so this client I was working with, we did an outbound campaign, we did some LinkedIn content, and then we rolled out a referral strategy with our other partners. And it was very clear to see that the referral piece was very effective, and so was the LinkedIn marketing. And it was just based on clear, how many leads did it generate, and how many of those leads quickly changed to a signed deal. So again, it's, I think, easier to track that attribution at this smaller scale, but it allows us to iterate quickly and make changes, and then double down on what's working and build out, okay, what's not just a 6-week campaign or experiment, but what is a 3-month campaign now, and what is that going to look like?
You've got a great consumer background. You also have B2B focused clients today. Just putting on your consumer, hat and the measurement that you've done recently, what are some interesting trends on the B2C side?
Thinking about this larger client that I worked with a little while ago, and Reddit and ChatGPT were huge channels that they were starting to monitor and trying to figure out what tools are good to monitor and what's the customer sentiment out there, and how do we quickly, there's so much information out there, how do you synthesize it, right? And so that was a really interesting project to work on. I used a tool called GigaBrain, which was great in terms of specifically synthesizing Reddit. And so much of what shows up in ChatGPT is from Reddit. And similarly, there's a lot of cool tools. We could go down a whole rabbit hole, but I think there was a greater focus on, being able to pull data and analyze what are customers saying. So whether it was a hospitality company, so TripAdvisor was huge, right? So what are those reviews saying? Reddit, there's a whole hospitality ecosystem on Reddit, right? And then similarly, how does that show up in results on ChatGPT? So I think there are some really cool tools out there to help with that data analysis, but that was a really interesting piece to look at.
That's great. What do you have a rabbit hole list of those tools?
Well, it's not super long, but it's GigaBrain is a good one, and then OG Tool is a really interesting one. OG Tool is more for interacting, so it goes back to founder marketing a little bit, but interacting with the posts on Reddit and being helpful from the standpoint of that founder who has tangible experience in whatever the posts are about.
We are seeing that trend line exponentially increase right now as a trend for all of the brands, across the board. I think that Slingwave models measure, partners that we work with observe. I think as you have seen it in the time you've been working on it, how project that out, a year from now, how important is that channel for a B2C brand?
I wish I had a crystal ball, but honestly, I think it's very similar to Google. And if I just think about my own actions and when I talk to my friends who are using ChatGPT, it's becoming such a recommendation engine. And with the links, I think we're going to see ChatGPT and OpenAI do a lot on the commerce space, similar to, I believe it's Perplexity has rolled out some commerce tools. I just think it's a natural, path to really helping consumers, right? Figure out what the best product is based on their needs. So I think it's smart to try and think about, okay, how do I get into those results? And how can I be a player when those different tools are rolled out?
More to come, and yeah, excited to see that play out as you get into more. We'll have to have you back to talk about the trend, 5 to 6 months from now. We'll see
There
where
you
we
go.
are. Kat, you have one piece of advice to give an early stage company, the companies you advise, and they're building their first marketing function. What is that piece of advice?
So my one piece of advice to early stage founders is, many times I work with them and they're doing the sales and it's going well. And there's this existential fear that if they take a step back from the sales motion, sales will turn to zero and the company will crater. I really wish more founders would understand if we create a process and we outline it so that the team understands, sales will continue to scale without them. And they generally are better positioned to do other things like strategy and maybe some personal branding to really help scale the business in other ways.
How do the founders you work with see their role in their organizations? Once they've become a sales engine, once the sales engines transition, how do the founders best spend their time next?
Yeah, it's interesting because I see a shift in the founders usually when they take a step back from that sales process, that it's no longer this, oh my gosh, fight or flight, we've got to make this happen day to day. And there's a little bit of an identity crisis. But then once we get through that, they can sort of take a breath and think longer term. So I often see founders focus, whether it's building new technology or building new products, but taking, not just the 3-month view, but the 12, 18-month view. And what does that look like? And what do we need to start building today to be successful in 18 months?
Time is such a scarce resource. So any found time gives you that opportunity as a founder. You don't have a crystal ball, but do you have anything that's kind of on top of your radar in terms of where marketing is heading in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I keep coming back to this sentiment. I heard a product manager talk about I listen to a lot of podcasts and particularly one about how to build with AI. And growing up in Palo Alto, not being a computer science major or an engineer, I always felt like, oh, I don't have that tool or that way to build my next company. And what he said on the podcast, I think is really interesting, is because of AI, it's allowed everyone to be a builder and an engineer. I don't want to gloss over engineering. I think it's still very difficult and you need good engineers on your team. But marketing has become so much more important because anyone can build anything now. But if you can't market it and you don't know how to position it and you don't know how to sell it, it's just another thing on the internet. There's a lot of sentiment around AI, whether it's good or bad or scary, all these feelings because it's change. But that is what I find very inspiring, is that, especially if you are a marketer, right? There's a lot to be done to help scale these products that are coming out, and you can build your own product and you can, if you're a marketer, scale it as well. It's just an important function.
And just adding to that, I think we've talked about this with Jonathan Tushman in an earlier episode, where he is an engineer. He's running an organization that is AI forward. And it's a requirement for his organization to market the piece that you are building, the platform you are building, before you build it. So it's demonstrating what you will do with this in parallel. And it's almost as important, if not more important, than the product you build, to your point.
Yeah, I love that.
Thanks so much for the conversation, Kat. This is great. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I'm Katharine Hill Contag on LinkedIn.
Appreciate it. It's great to have you on the podcast. It's great discussion, and all the best with the Claro Group. And we'll look forward to having you on a future episode.
Thanks so much, Paul.
And for all our listeners, thank you for joining us today on this episode of the Incremental Marketer. Stay tuned for more voices, more lessons, and more proof that the incremental moves you make can drive growth. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and join us for more episodes with the leaders shaping the future of marketing.